My father, whose name was Ron, was an ex-Vietnam vet and had a lot of trauma around the time I was born, 1971, from stuff in Vietnam, and so he became a heavy drinker. And one day somebody told him that, a doctor I guess, told him that you got to start exercising as well as staying sober. So he heard about this new form of exercise, 1971, that some woman named Jane Fonda had just invented called yoga. That's my little joke, or his joke. But he never made it to, she actually was doing a seminar on yoga, but he never made it. He picked up a book, which I will dovetail and say is the book that's been the most influential in my life as well as my dad, and that's called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahamsa Yogananda. And he opened it and he read about meditation and yoga, you know, meat and potatoes, Irish Catholic, Vietnam vet who's like coming across this stuff, kind of like you might have experienced.
Just immersing yourself in a different worldview. That sounds like he was open to it.
He was open to anything. The guy, he saw his whole platoon blown to pieces. He was in the Tet Offensive and in Cambodia, and he went through some hell. And my mom was pregnant. In any event, he read this book, and he's reading the one chapter called An Experience in Cosmic Consciousness. And the thing is, for people that have heard that title or of Yogananda for the first time, behind the scenes, Yogananda is always talking about the science of the practice. He's not all woo-woo, new agey at all. He's definitely a guy who, you know, backed up his claims that this is a sound-based pranayama or breath practice that has allegedly the capacity to heal you on a cellular level to the point where nothing's left but your true awakened being. And my father was an Irish Catholic, read this. I can't imagine what he thought, but he felt truth in it. He was like something, but I don't know, so I try the practice. And the practice was given the generic name Kriya Yoga, which Kriya is a feminine noun in Sanskrit, which means active, something you do consciously. And this is, again, a science of using sound current with breath to heal the subtle and physical and emotional bodies. And so my father became my teacher after some experiences at the age of 12 or 13 when I began to realize that the whole Catholic thing wasn't doing it for me.
So he was raising you in the church?
No, my mother was. Sorry, jumped ahead. So my parents divorced eventually, and my father turned more and more into the yoga tradition, and my mother turned, we might leave this part out about my mom, but she turned into fundamentalist Christianity.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
There's I feel like the scientific-minded, the intellect, that's what intrigues me about yoga, is because it's so specific, and there's a lot of faith in Christianity. That's like, just take it by faith.
It's not
yoga says you can figure all this out. We'll teach you how to
can experience it.
Yeah, you can experience it.
You know, you heard in the panel before with Darren, it's like if it's not working, go to the beach or try Tai Chi or whatever. Yeah. So he started doing this breath practice, and he was initiated by the monks in Yogananda's organization. And around the age of 12 or 13, I began to realize, as things got more fundamentalist Christian, where I was living with my mom, who's a wonderful person, but I realized I can't really get into Jimmy Swaggart psychology. I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And I started at the same time listening to sounds in the forest when there was fresh snowfall in upstate New York. And I would love to try to hear sound in the silence of the snow blanketing the forest floor. And one day I had an experience where I guess I would say now I felt a rhythm of energy in my spine, is how I would put it. But I heard the hum of the forest that was not immediately obvious, and then I felt it inside myself.
Cool.
A summer after that, I went to my dad's house, and I noticed he would sit and make those kind of sounds in meditation, and then I learned all about this Kriya Yoga thing.
So you had that taste as well.
I had the taste, sat in front of him. In a longer dialogue, I would go into the 3 major phases in my teenage years where I had a little mini realization sitting with my father. But I want to fast forward for brevity and say that when he was 59, he went into the hospital with a pain in his hip, and he was diagnosed with bone marrow cancer. 2 months to live. You know,
Agent Orange.
We don't know.
Okay,
that's a great question. Nobody knows where it's called multiple myeloma. But in any event, he was told, and this is the key thing tying all this together, he was told, there's nothing you can do except the bone marrow transplant in which you kill all the T killer cells. Then when you start to recover, you're weak as hell and you get like pneumonia but it'll give you a year. And he's like, he turned to me, and at the time he had 2,000 or 3,000 meditation students. He was a president or the director of Alcoholics Anonymous, where he lived on the island of Bermuda.
Okay.
That's where he finished off his days. Well, not actually. He came back to New York and rented a cabin, and all he would see was me. And he just did the Kriya practice night and day. And he said, look, this is supposed to heal you. It got me sober. I've had realizations. Now I'm going to really push myself and face fear of death. And that's when he stopped saying the word fear. He started using the acronym, false evidence appearing real.
Oh, wow.
And he became the first person in New York State history on record to go into remission, on record, not maybe the first one, without chemotherapy on multiple myeloma. I mean, so he had none left. Maybe little flicks and specks of it in his system, but almost none. And for the last 2 years of his life, he did this practice and his students swelled. And then one day he went into a meditation and literally he was with his friend who had been his nurse, and now was his student. And she saw him sit down, and he went right out of his body. He was just meditating and went out. So one of the last things he told me was, this practice, bowing to Yogananda and all that, is something's not complete. You got to find the full breadth of what these people were doing in these ancient texts. And he knew I was at Harvard Divinity School.
Okay.
And I was studying Sanskrit then. But I was just beginning to find out from my professors that there's a whole bunch of texts that haven't been published. And guess what? You don't have to be a scribe with a big scroll of Sanskrit. They've been typed in, and you can search through them. I don't know if you were there for the whole thing.
I missed.
I went through this in the beginning. But basically, I have 60,000 texts I could search through. And of course, the first thing I did was I traced the roots of Yogananda's practice and found the original practice. Had my father had the original practice, maybe he would have knocked the cancer out in a week.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't know. So the sound-based practice, which is about...
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Your dad was doing that.
Yeah, and so I found the full practice, and I won't necessarily go into all the details, but it's a daily yoga vidhi. Vidhi means daily ritual of breath, mantra, and movement that does not change from the 6th century to the late 19th.
Oh, wow.
You see the same daily steps, and the promise is that it'll open you up to the deathless immortality, which is a sound current that you hear in your whole body. And, one after another, these masters give the same... they bow to that practice, but then their testimony, this is what I felt when I heard the sound and breathed this way.
Okay.
South India, North India, Kashmir, 15th century, 18th, 12th century, they're all saying the same thing, and they don't know each other.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at. I'm still mining this stuff, and I haven't published much, and I just came back after touring for years to all the yoga studios around the country that would have me to hear about this stuff. And now I'm